Good morning. We are starting a little bit early, so make sure to grab your coffee, your tea. I have hot cocoa here because we are in for the time of our lives breaking down this story. Okay, so we are starting. I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Danielle. I'm the education specialist here at the Turning Point Rape Crisis Center, and this is our brand new 5-week series called Powerful Men. And in this series, we're going to be breaking down 5 different powerful men and how they use their power to exert control and perpetuate sexual violence. So, this week, we're going to be talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And if you haven't heard about Jeffrey Epstein, where do you live? Because Jeffrey Epstein is somebody that has been very much like talked about, speculated about, documentaries are about. And if you tune in on Film Fridays, we're going to be tying in our Powerful Men series with Film Friday. So whoever we talk about on Empowered Education Thursday is who we're going to show a documentary about on Film Friday. So if you want to watch the documentary about Jeffrey Epstein with us, then tune in tomorrow at 2:30 for Film Friday. So with that all being said, let's get into it. I have a lot of information that I'm going to be covering, and it might get overwhelming, but just know, listen to my voice. Don't try and read the slides because it is a lot of information. You are going to be astounded. I wanted to make sure to cover every single one of the allegations, or at least try to be able to have these survivor stories be heard and hear the atrocities that this man perpetuated. So, let's get into it. So, this is our presentation. It takes unity. It's a bystander's guide on being empowered and educated because once we're educated about the problem, we can be the change to fix it and support survivors along the way. Here at the Turning Point, we have a 24-hour crisis hotline, which is 1-800-886-7273. And at that number, you can call to get involved with counseling, get a SANE exam, which is a sexual assault nurse examination, and also contact us about potential education presentations. So that goes and leads me into our services. So first things first, we offer 110% free counseling for survivors and their friends and family members. We want to make sure that everybody is supported through working through this trauma. Then next, we do advocacy. So we go into the hospitals and to our personal clinic and support survivors during their sexual assault nurse examination. And then lastly is this education, where we go into the community and different online platforms and share awareness about the roots and causes of sexual violence and how you can prevent it. So, our mission. Our mission is to highlight the impact of sexual violence on individuals and our community through education programs that foster hope, encourage change, and prevent sexual violence. Join us in the fight against sexual violence. The Turning Point is committed to reducing the prevalence of sexual violence in our community. We firmly believe that for this change to occur, each person has a responsibility and must do their part to prevent sexual violence. So let's get into it. Powerful men. Jeffrey Epstein. So, Jeffrey Epstein was an American financier and convicted sex offender. He began his professional life as a teacher, but then switched to the banking and finance sector in various roles, working at Bear Stearns before forming his own firm. He developed an elite social circle and procured many women, including underage girls, who were then sexually abused by Epstein and some of his contacts. So, let's get into it. His first criminal case was in 2005 to 2006. So in March of 2005, a woman contacted Florida Palm Beach Police Department and alleged that her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been taken to Epstein's mansion by an older girl. There, she was allegedly paid $300, equivalent to like almost $400 now, as of 2019, but now we're in 2020, so it's definitely closer to $400 to strip and massage Jeffrey Epstein. She had allegedly undressed, but then left the encounter wearing her underwear. Palm Beach police began a 13-month undercover investigation of Epstein, including a search of his home. During the investigation, Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder publicly accused the Palm Beach County State Prosecutor Barry Kreischer of being too lenient and called for help from the FBI. So the FBI then became involved. Subsequently, the police alleged that Epstein had paid several girls to perform sexual acts with him. Interviews with 5 alleged victims and 17 witnesses under oath, a high school transcript and other items found in Epstein's trash and home allegedly showed that some of the girls involved were under 18, the youngest being 14, with many under 16. The police search of Epstein's home found 2 hidden cameras and large numbers of photos of girls throughout the house, some of whom the police had interviewed in the course of the investigation. Adriana Ross, a former model from Poland who became an Epstein assistant, reportedly removed computer drives and other electronic equipment from the financier's Florida mansion before Palm Beach police, that is a tongue twister, Palm Beach police searched the home as part of their investigation. The court documents record that a search of Epstein's residence by Palm Beach detective Joseph Carey in 2005 uncovered an incriminating Amazon receipt for books on sex slavery. The books he ordered are titled SM 101, A Realistic Introduction, Slavecraft, Roadmaps for Erotic Servitude, Principles, Skills, and Tools, and lastly, Training with Miss Abernathy, a workbook for erotic slaves and their owners. So, that is a lot of information for just the first criminal case. That is insane. But this is just the beginning, so let's get into it. So, a non-prosecution agreement was made, an NPA, in 2006 through 2008. So, in July 2006, the FBI began its own investigation of Epstein, nicknamed Operation Leap Year. It resulted in a 53-page indictment in June 2007. Alexander Acosta, the then U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, agreed to a plea deal that Alan Dershowitz, I'm going to butcher last names, I'm so sorry, helped to negotiate, to grant immunity from all federal criminal charges to Epstein. So he was pardoned. He got immunity from all federal criminal charges, along with 4 named co-conspirators and any unnamed potential co-conspirators, according to the Miami Herald and the non-prosecution agreement, essentially shut down on ongoing FBI probe into whether there were more victims and other powerful people who took part in Epstein's sex crimes. At the time, this halted the investigation and sealed the indictment. The Miami Herald said Acosta agreed, despite a federal law to the contrary, that the deal would be kept from the victims. Acosta later said he offered a lenient plea deal because he was told that Epstein belonged to intelligence, was above his pay grade, and to leave it alone. Epstein agreed to plead guilty in Florida State Court to felony prostitution charges, register as a sex offender, and pay restitution to 36 victims identified by the FBI. The plea deal was later described as a sweetheart deal. A federal judge later found that the prosecutors had violated the victims' rights and that they had concealed the agreement from the victims instead urged them to have patience. Okay, now conviction and sentencing. So this is 2008 to 2011. So on June 30th, let me take a sip of my hot chocolate first. It's a lot of talking. We got a lot of information. On June 30th, 2008, After Epstein pleaded guilty to a state charge, one of two, of procuring for prostitution of a girl below the age of 18, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. While most convicted sex offenders in Florida are sent to state prison, Epstein was instead housed in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade and, according to the sheriff's office, was after 3.5 months allowed to leave the jail on work release for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. This contravened the sheriff's own policies requiring a maximum remaining sentence of 10 months and making sex offenders ineligible for the privilege. He was allowed to come and go outside of specific release hours. Epstein was in jail, but he still got to leave on work release for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. What is he doing? And so Epstein's cell door was left unlocked. He had access to the attorney room where a television was installed for him before he was moved to the stockade's previously unstaffed infirmary. He worked at the office of a foundation he had created shortly before reporting to jail. He dissolved it after he had served his time. The sheriff's office received $128,000 from Epstein's nonprofit to pay for the cost of extra services being provided during his work release. His office was monitored by permit deputies whose overtime was paid by Epstein. They were required to wear suits and check in welcome guests at the front desk. Later, the sheriff's office said these guest logs were destroyed per the department's records retention rules, although inexplicably, the stockade visitor logs were not. He was allowed to use his own driver to take him between jail and his office and other appointments. Epstein served almost 13 months before being released for a year probation on house arrest until August 2010. While on probation, he was allowed numerous trips on his corporate jet to his residencies in Manhattan and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He was allowed long shopping trips and to walk around Palm Beach for exercise. After a congested hearing in January 2011 and an appeal, he stayed registered in New York State as a Level 3 high risk of repeat offense sex offender, a lifelong designation. At that hearing, the Manhattan District Attorney argued unsuccessfully that the level should be reduced to a low risk Level 1 and was chided by the judge. Despite opposition from Epstein's lawyer that he had a main home in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the judge confirmed he personally must check in with the New York Police Department every 90 days. Though Epstein had been a Level 3 registered sex offender in New York since 2010, the New York State Department never enforced the 90-day regulation, though non-compliance is a felony. So we are seeing a common theme here of a series of events that would not happen for the average citizen. This person had immense amounts of power and money to be able to craft his prison experience, his probation experience to his will and what he wanted. So that was the first criminal case. There are tons of civil cases against Jeffrey Epstein, and now we're going to get into that. Now, this one is where it gets overwhelming because there is a lot of them, and I wanted to make sure that I at least touched on every single one. There may be more than this, but I wanted to be able to acknowledge every single one because I think that they're all important and all valid, and I didn't want to have to pick which ones I showed and which ones I didn't. So Jane Doe's versus Epstein, 2008. So on February 6, 2008, an anonymous Virginia woman known as Jane Doe number 2 filed a $50 million civil lawsuit in federal court against Epstein, saying that when she was 16 years old, when she was a 16-year-old minor in 2004 to 2005, she was recruited to give Epstein a massage. She claimed she was taken to his mansion where he exposed himself and had sexual intercourse with her and paid her $200 immediately after. A similar $50 million lawsuit was filed in March 2008 by a different woman who was represented by the same lawyer. These and several similar lawsuits were dismissed. All other lawsuits have been settled by Epstein out of court. Epstein has made many out of court settlements with alleged victims. So there are probably so many victims that we will never have any sort of record of because all of these were settled out of court. And when they're settled out of court, we don't know what happens. So, okay, this one's a little bit longer. So victims' rights, Jane Doe's versus the United States government. So, and this was in 2014. That was actually when I graduated high school. So, December 30th, 2014, a federal civil suit was filed in Florida by Jane Doe 1, Courtney Wild, and Jane Doe 2 against the United States for violations of the Crime Victims' Rights Act by the U.S. Department of Justice NPA with Epstein and his limited 2008 state plea. There was a later unsuccessful effort to add Virginia Roberts, Jane Doe 3, and another woman, Jane Doe 4, as plaintiffs to that case. The additional accused Alan Dershowitz of sexually abusing a minor. Jane Doe 3 provided by Epstein. The allegations against Dershowitz were stricken by the judge and eliminated from the case because he said they were outside the intent of the suit to reopen the plea agreement. A document filed in court alleges that Epstein ran a sexual abuse ring and lent underage girls to prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, and well-known prime ministers and other world leaders. So these are men that are powerful. And this is a sex ring of underage girls being pimped in different directions. So this long-running lawsuit is pending in federal court aimed at vacating the federal plea agreement on the grounds that if it violated victims' rights. On April 7th, 2015, Judge Kenneth Mara ruled that the allegations made by alleged victim Virginia Roberts against Prince Andrew had no bearing on the lawsuit by alleging victims seeking to reopen Epstein's non-prosecution plea agreement with the federal government. The judge ordered that allegation to be struck from the record. So now we have Prince Andrew being struck from the record and Alan Dershowitz being struck from the record. Judge Mara made no ruling, as to whether claims by Roberts are true or false. So whether or not Virginia Roberts was telling the truth, the judge made no claim to that. He just didn't want, or he striked Alan Dershowitz and Prince Andrew from anywhere being involved in the lawsuit. Though he did not allow Jane Doe 3 and Jane Doe 4 to join the suit, Mara specifically said that Roberts may later give evidence when the case comes to court. On February 21st, 2019, so last year, in the case of the two Jane Does versus United States, our senior judge of the U.S. District of the Southern District of Florida, Kenneth Mara, said that federal prosecutors violated the law by failing to notify victims before they allowed him to plead guilty to only the two Florida offenses. The judge left open what the possible remedy could be. So we don't even know what their justice is going to be for their rights being violated as of last year. So then we have Virginia Roberts versus Epstein, 2015. This is another civil case. In a December 2014 Florida court filing by Bradley Edwards and Paul G. Castell meant for inclusion in the Crime Victims' Rights Act lawsuit, Virginia Roberts I'm not going to say that. I don't know how to say that. Then known as Virginia Roberts, alleged in a sworn affidavit that at age 17, she had been sexually trafficked by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for their own use and for use by several others, including Prince Andrew and retired Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Roberts also claimed that Epstein, Maxwell, and others had physically and sexually abused her. She alleged that the FBI may have been involved in a cover-up. She said she had served as Epstein's sex slave from 1999 to 2002 and had recruited other underage girls. Prince Andrew, Epstein, and Dershowitz all denied having sex with Roberts. Dershowitz took legal action over the allegations, and Roberts filed a defamation suit against Dershowitz, claiming he purposefully made false and malicious defamatory statements about her. A diary purported that to belong to Roberts was published online. Epstein entered an out-of-court settlement with Roberts, as he had done in several other lawsuits, and in 2019, Roberts was interviewed by the BBC's Panorama, where she continued to attest that Epstein had trafficked her to Prince Andrew. She appealed directly to the public by stating, "I implore to the people in the UK to stand up beside me, to help me fight this fight, to accept this as and not to accept this as being okay. As of 2016, these accusations have not been tested in any court of law." So, then we have Jane Doe versus Epstein and Trump. And this was in 2016. So a federal lawsuit filed in California in April 2016 against Epstein and Donald Trump by a California woman alleged that the two men sexually assaulted her at a series of parties at at Epstein's Manhattan residence in 1994 when she was 13 years old. The suit was dismissed by a federal judge in May 2016 because it did not raise valid claims under federal law. The woman filed another federal suit in New York in June 2016, but it was withdrawn 3 months later, apparently without being served on the defendants. A third federal suit was filed in New York in September 16. The two later suits included affidavits by an anonymous witness who attested to the accusations in the suits, asserting Epstein employed her to procure underage girls for him, and an anonymous person who declared the plaintiff had told him/her about the assaults at the time they occurred. The plaintiff had filed anonymously as Jane Doe, was scheduled to appear in Los Angeles press conference 6 days before the 2016 election, but abruptly canceled the event. Her lawyer, Lisa Bloom, asserted that the woman had received threats. The suit was dropped on November 4th, 2016, and Trump's attorney, Alan Garten, flatly denied the allegations, while Epstein declined to comment. Okay, now I gotta make myself tiny. So these ones are a little bit shorter, a lot shorter, and we're just gonna knock them out. So Sarah Ransom versus Epstein and Maxwell. So in 2017, Sarah Ransom filed a suit against Epstein and Maxwell, alleging that Maxwell had hired her to give massages to Epstein and later threatened to physically harm her or destroy her career prospects if she did not comply with their sexual demands at his mansion in New York City and on his private Caribbean island, Little St. James. The suit was settled in 2018 under undisclosed terms. Then we have Bradley Edwards defamation versus Epstein, 2018. A state civil lawsuit in Florida filed by attorney Bradley Edwards against Epstein was scheduled for trial in December 2018. The trial was expected to provide victims with their first opportunity to make their accusations in public. However, the case was settled on the first day of the trial, with Epstein publicly apologizing to Edwards. Other terms of the settlement were confidential. Mariah Farmer versus Epstein and Maxwell. So on April 16, 2019, Mariah Farmer went public and filed a sworn affidavit in federal court in New York alleging that she and her 15-year-old sister Annie had been sexually assaulted by Epstein and Maxwell in separate locations in 1996. Farmer met Epstein and Maxwell at her graduate art gallery reception at the New York Academy of Art in 1995. The following year, the summer of 1996, they hired her to work on an art project in Leslie Wexner's Ohio mansion, where she was then sexually assaulted. Farmer reported the incident to the New York City Police Department and the FBI. The farmer's affidavit also stated that during the same summer, Epstein flew her then 15-year-old sister to his New Mexico property, where he and Maxwell sexually abused her on a massage table. Then we have Jennifer Roaz versus Epstein and Maxwell. So Maxwell is Ghislaine Maxwell. That was his significant other, partner in crime. On July 22, 2019, while in jail awaiting trial, Epstein was served with a petition regarding a pending state civil lawsuit filed by Jennifer Roaz. She stated that an associate for Epstein had recruited her outside Talent Unlimited High School at age 14, and she gradually groomed her over a year before Epstein raped her in his New York City mansion when she was 15. Roaz filed her suit on August 14, 2019, when New York state law was updated to allow 1 year for adult survivors of child sexual abuse to sue for previous offenses, regardless of how long ago the abuse took place. In October 2019, Roaz amended her complaint to include over 20 corporate entities associated with Epstein and named the additional individuals Leslie Groff and Kimberly Espinoza as enablers. Next, we have Caitlin Doe et al. Versus Epstein's estate in 2019. 3 women, Caitlin Doe, Lisa Doe, and Priscilla Doe, sued the Epstein estate, or the estate of Epstein, on August 20th, 2019. 2 of the women were 17 and 1 was 20 when they met Epstein. The women alleged they were recruited and subjected to unwanted sex acts and controlled by Epstein and a vast enterprise of co-conspirators. Jane Doe versus Epstein's estate 2019. A New York accuser of Epstein, known only as Jane Doe, announced a federal lawsuit against his estate in the Southern District of New York on September 18, 2019, stating she was recruited in 2002 and sexually abused by Epstein for 3 years starting at age 14. Teresa Helm et al. Versus Epstein's estate in 2019. 5 women, Teresa Helm, Annie Farmer, Mariah Farmer, Juliet Bryant, and an unidentified woman represented by David Boaz, sued Epstein's estate in federal district court in Manhattan in November 2019, accusing him of rape, battery, and false imprisonment and seeking unspecified damages. Jane Doe 15 versus Epstein's estate in 2019. On November 18, 2019, a woman identified as Jane Doe 15 made a public appearance with her attorney Gloria Allred to announce that she was suing the estate of Jeffrey Epstein in the district court for the Southern District of New York, alleging that he manipulated, trafficked, and sexually abused her in 2004 when she was 15 years old. On November 21st, 2019, Tila Davies appeared with her attorney Gloria Allred and announced her lawsuit in Manhattan federal court against Epstein's estate. Davies stated that after meeting Epstein in 2002, he sexually assaulted and trafficked her in New York, New Mexico, Florida, the Virgin Islands, and France. Jane Doe's 1 through 9 versus Epstein's estate, 2019. On December 3rd, 2019, lawyer Jordan Merson filed a lawsuit in New York on behalf of 9 anonymous accusers, Jane Doe's 1 through 9, and against Epstein's estate for battery, assault, and intentional emotional distress. The claims date from 1985 through the 2000s and include individuals who were 13, 14, and 15 when they first encountered Epstein. J.J. Doe versus Epstein's estate, 2019. The lawsuit was filed by Bradley Edwards on behalf of his client in late December 2019. The accuser, J.J. Doe, is described as being a 14-year-old resident of Palm Beach County at the time Epstein abused her in 2004. U.S. Virgin Islands versus Epstein's estate et al., 2020. A lawsuit was filed in Superior Court of the U.S. Virgin Isles in January 2020, alleging that Epstein ran a sex trafficking conspiracy over 2 decades through 2018 with children as young as 11 years old on Epstein's Caribbean islands. According to the Attorney General Denise George, his alleged criminal activities on the islands were concealed through a complex network of companies. Jane Doe versus Maxwell and Epstein's estate, 2020. So in January 2020, a lawsuit was filed against Maxwell and Epstein alleging that they recruited a 13-year-old music student at the Interlochen Center for the Arts in 1994 and subjected her to sexual abuse. The suit states that Jane Doe was repeatedly sexually assaulted by Epstein over a 4-year period and that Maxwell played a key role both in her recruitment and by participating in the assaults. Jane Doe versus Epstein's estate, 2020, and August 2020, 9th, 2020, Jane Doe filed a suit against Epstein of sexual abuse. The alleged victims in the lawsuit include 11 and 13-year-old and a victim who alleged abuse in 1975. And then Jane Doe versus Epstein's estate, 2020. In August 2020, Epstein was sued by a Jane Doe accusing him of sexually abusing her for 1.5 years, beginning when she was an 18-year-old aspiring singer and model in New York. So now we're back into the criminal side. So this is the second criminal case for trafficking charges. So on July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey on sex trafficking charges. He was jailed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, which has held prisoners such as John Gotti, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and Paul Manafort. According to the witnesses and sources, on the day of his arrest, and about a dozen FBI agents forced open the door of his Manhattan townhouse, the Herbert N. Strauss house, with search warrants. The search of his townhouse turned up evidence of sex trafficking and also found hundreds and perhaps thousands of sexually suggestive photographs of fully or partially nude females. Some of the photos were confirmed as those of underage females. In a locked safe, compact discs were found with handwritten labels, including the description, young name plus name, miscellaneous nudes 1, and girl pics nudes. All found in the safe were found with all found in the safe were $70,000 in cash, 48 diamonds, a fraudulent Australian passport which expired in 1987 that had Epstein's photo but another name. A passport had numerous entrance and exit stamps, including entrance stamps that showed the use of the passport to enter France, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia in the 1980s. The passport showed his place of residence as Saudi Arabia. According to his attorneys, Epstein had been advised to acquire the passport because as an influent member of the Jewish faith, he was in danger of being kidnapped while traveling abroad. On July 8th, prosecutors with the Public Corruption Unit of the Southern District of New York charged him with sex trafficking and conspiracy to traffic minors for sex. The grand jury indictment alleges that dozens of underage girls were brought into Epstein's mansion for sexual encounters. Judge Kenneth Mara was to decide whether the non-prosecution agreement that protected Epstein from more serious charges should still stand. Federal paperwork regarding Jeffrey Epstein being denied bail. Epstein requested to be released on bond, offering to post $100 million with the condition that he would also submit to house arrest in his New York City mansion. The U.S. District Judge Richard M. Berman denied this request on July 18th, saying Epstein posed a danger to the public and a serious flight risk to avoid prosecution. On July 23rd, Epstein was found injured and semi-conscious at 1:30 a.m. on the floor of his cell with marks around his neck that were suspected to be the result of either a suicide attempt or an assault. His cellmate, former New York City police officer Nicholas Tardigian, who was charged with 4 counts of murder, was questioned about Epstein's condition. He denied having any knowledge of what happened. Epstein himself said he recollected nothing. According to NBC News, 2 sources said that Epstein might have tried to hang himself. A third said the injuries were not serious and could have been staged. A fourth source said that an assault by his cellmate had not been ruled out. On August 29, 2019, following Epstein's death 10 days prior, the case against Epstein was closed after Judge Berman dismissed all sex trafficking charges. However, he also expressed support for Epstein's accusers. Prosecutors objected to ruling and stating they would continue an investigation for potential co-conspirators. And then there was also an investigation in France. On August 23, 2019, the prosecutor's office in Paris, France, opened a preliminary investigation into Epstein. He was being investigated for rape and sexual assault of minors under and over the age of 15, criminal association with a view of committing crimes, and association with criminals with a view of committing offenses. The prosecutor said that the goal of the investigation is to find possible crimes committed in France and elsewhere against French citizens. So, any questions? That was a lot of information. He has a long history, and his death is something that is very much a undetermined. Did he kill himself? Was he killed by these powerful men because he was running out of being able to run from all of his past stuff? It was coming up again, and him being indicted, that would lead to a lot of other powerful people's dirty laundry also coming out and their crimes coming out. So leave a comment down below if you think that he was a part of some deeper conspiracy, or if you think that it's just something that is merely a conspiracy. But make sure to tune in on Film Friday, where we watch Jeffrey Epstein's documentary, and make sure to leave a comment down below about your thoughts about this first Powerful Men series. Make sure to give this video a like, a comment, and a share with at least 10 friends, and we'll see you tomorrow for Film Friday at 2:30. Bye!